I was sitting at Thanksgiving dinner when my brother-in-law looked right at me and said, "Grace, you're still alive? I thought you'd be living in a van by now." The whole table laughed. My sister Diane rolled her eyes and added, "Honestly, Grace, we all knew retiring at 58 was insane." I sat there, fork mid-air, feeling every single eye on me. That was 18 months ago. They're not laughing anymore. My name is Grace Thompson. I'm 60 years old. I worked for 32 years as a hospital administrator. Steady job, decent salary, nothing flashy. I never married, no kids. My family always saw me as the boring one who just worked and went home. But I had a dream. I wanted to retire early, travel a little, volunteer, and live simply, intentionally. So I saved. I lived below my means. I didn't talk about my finances with anyone, not even family. My siblings? They were all about appearances, flashy cars, big houses, keeping up with the neighbors. I didn't fit that mold. Wasn't rich. I wasn't reckless. But I had something they didn't expect. I had a plan. When I retired at 58, I thought my family would celebrate with me, maybe even be proud. Instead, they mocked me, pitied me, treated me like I'd made the worst decision of my life. They thought I'd fail. I thought I'd finally be free. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have supported you, subscribe right now and drop your location in the comments. I read every single one. The nightmare really started at my own retirement party. I organized it myself. Just a small gathering at a local restaurant. My co-workers, a few family members. Diane and my brother Paul showed up, but they spent the entire time making snide comments. Diane said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Grace, you do realize Social Security doesn't kick in for years, right? What are you going to live on, Hope?" Paul laughed. "She probably thinks her little 401k will last forever. This is going to be a disaster." I tried to explain that I'd planned everything, that I'd been careful. They cut me off. Paul's wife Linda whispered to someone next to her, but not quietly enough. I give her 6 months before she's begging for handouts. One of my coworkers asked me about my plans. I told her I wanted to travel, volunteer at an animal shelter, explore hobbies I'd never had time for. Diane interrupted. "Oh, please, Grace, you'll be back working part-time at a grocery store within a year. You've always been too cautious to actually enjoy life, and now you're too reckless with money." The room went silent, awkward. My boss tried to smooth it over. "Well, Grace has always been responsible?" It sounded like a polite way of calling me boring. I left my own party early, humiliated, and for the first time in months, I doubted myself. That night, I was lying in bed when my phone buzzed. It was a group text from Paul, except he'd accidentally included me. The message said, "Grace is going to crash and burn. We'll probably have to bail her out by Christmas." I stared at that screen for a long time, and then I didn't cry. I took a screenshot, and I saved it in a folder I titled Receipts. 3 months into retirement, I found out Paul and Diane had organized a family financial planning brunch. They invited their kids, talked about investments, estate strategies, building generational wealth. I wasn't invited. I only found out because my niece Brooke, Paul's daughter, posted Instagram stories from the event. The caption said, "Building generational wealth with the fam." I texted Paul. Why wasn't I told about this? His reply came fast. "Honestly, Grace, we didn't think you'd have anything to contribute. You're on a fixed income now. This was for people still building wealth." I stared at that message for a full minute. Then I put my phone down and didn't reply. But it hurt. It really hurt. 6 months into retirement, I went to my cousin's wedding. I thought it would be nice, a chance to reconnect with family, celebrate something happy. During the reception, Diane stood up to make a toast. She smiled at the bride and groom. Here's to love, laughter, and smart financial choices. Unlike some people we know who retired way too early. She glanced right at me. People who knew our family laughed. My face burned. Later, at the reception, an uncle I barely knew walked up to me. "So Grace, how's unemployment treating you?" I corrected him. "I'm retired." He laughed. "Same thing at your age, isn't it?" I left early. Again. I was starting to notice a pattern. I was the family punchline. Around month 10, Diane called me. Her voice was suddenly warm, friendly. She said she was worried about me and wanted to take me to lunch. I should have known better. We met at a cafe. She ordered a fancy salad and spent the first 10 minutes talking about her kids. Then she leaned in. "Grace, are you okay? Like, financially okay?" I tried to be honest. "I'm doing fine. Better than I expected, actually." Her tone shifted. "Well, if you have extra, Paul and I are investing in a rental property. We thought you might want in. You know, to grow your little nest egg." I asked for details. She waved her hand. "It's complicated. Just trust us. We're family." I told her I'd have to pass. Her face hardened. "Fine. Don't come crying to us when your money runs out." She left me with the check. That night, I went home and checked my accounts. And I smiled. Because what they didn't know, what they never thought to ask, was that I'd been preparing for this moment since I was 43 years old. I didn't just save money, I invested it. I worked with a financial advisor for 15 years, built a dividend portfolio that generated passive income every single month. I paid off my condo when I turned 50. I took freelance consulting gigs, 2 or 3 projects a year, that paid well and kept my skills sharp. I traveled smart, house sat internationally, booked off-season deals. I lived minimally. But I wasn't struggling, I was thriving. What they mistook for poverty was actually freedom. I kept quiet because I didn't need to prove myself. I liked my privacy, and honestly, I wanted to see who would support me without knowing I was fine. The test results? They failed. I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. My saving grace during all of this was Margot. She was a co-worker who'd retired 3 years before me. We met for coffee every couple of weeks. Margot had her own pottery business now. She traveled. She was content. One afternoon, she looked at me across the table and said, "Stop letting them rent space in your head. You don't owe them a spreadsheet." She told me her family had doubted her too, that they came crawling back asking for money when she proved them wrong. She said no, and I realized I was allowed to do the same. Around month 16, I started hearing things through the family grapevine. Paul had lost money in a bad investment. That rental property Diane had wanted me to invest in, it fell through. Diane's husband got laid off. Suddenly, the wealth builders weren't so wealthy. They were asking relatives for loans. I didn't say a word. I just watched. Then, month 18, Diane called me. "We need to talk. It's about Mom's estate." Our mother was still alive, healthy even, but Diane wanted to plan ahead. Translation: she wanted to make sure I didn't get an equal share because I didn't need it and wasn't contributing to the family legacy. I agreed to meet at her house, and I brought Margot. Diane wasn't expecting that. We sat down at Diane's dining room table. Her, Paul, Linda, me, and Margot. Diane folded her hands. "Grace, we love you, but let's be honest, you don't have kids. You're not investing in anything long-term. We think it's fair if the estate is divided differently." Paul nodded. "You're living small. You don't need what we need." I stayed calm. What do you think I need? Diane shrugged. I don't know. Enough to get by? You're barely making it as it is. I opened my bag, pulled out my phone, and connected it to my laptop. I pulled up my retirement portfolio summary, the one I'd prepared just in case. I showed them everything. My condo, paid off, worth $350,000 in our market. My investment accounts, balanced, growing, generating $2,800 a month in passive income. My consulting work, $15,000 to $25,000 a year, as needed. My travel fund, healthy, active. The room went completely silent. Paul stared. Wait, you've had this the whole time? Yes. Diane's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? I looked right at her. You never asked. You just assumed I was failing because I didn't show off. Linda stuttered. But you said you were on a budget. I am, I said. That's called discipline. Something none of you understood. Paul tried to backtrack. Okay, well, this is great. See? You're doing fine. So you understand why we think the estate should... I cut him off. Should go to people who mocked me, excluded me, used my retirement as a punchline. I pulled out printed screenshots, the texts, the messages. I read Paul's text out loud. Grace is gonna crash and burn. We'll probably have to bail her out by Christmas. Then Diane's message to a cousin. She'll be broke by summer. Diane's face went bright red. That was private. So was my retirement plan, I said. But you made it everyone's business. I stood up. I don't need Mom's money, and I don't need your approval. Paul's voice got desperate. Grace, come on, family helps family. I stopped, turned. You're right. So when you laughed at me, excluded me, and bet on my failure, what was that? Silence. I walked toward the door. Margot followed, smiling. Diane chased after me onto the porch. Wait, Grace, we didn't mean it like that. Can we talk about your investment strategy sometime? I turned around. You want my advice now? She nodded, embarrassed. I took a breath. Here it is. Stop spending money to impress people who don't care, and stop underestimating the quiet ones. Then I walked to my car. Margot and I drove home with the windows down and the music on. I felt 20 pounds lighter. For years, I'd wanted them to see me, to be proud, to include me. But now I realized something. I was already free. I just didn't know it yet. In the weeks after, Paul sent me an apology text. I read it. I didn't reply right away. Maybe I will eventually. Maybe I won't. Diane tried calling twice. I let it go to voicemail. But my niece Brooke? She sent me a DM on Instagram. Aunt Grace, I had no idea. Can I ask you about investing? I replied. I'll help the next generation, but only the ones who ask with respect. I booked a trip to Portugal. Solo, guilt-free. I joined a retired women's travel group. We're planning a trip to Greece next spring. I planted a small garden on my balcony. Tomatoes, herbs, flowers. I volunteer at the animal shelter 3 days a week. I live loudly in my own quiet, intentional way, and I finally understood. I never needed their approval. I just needed to approve of myself. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated by people who should have lifted you up? Drop your story below. I read them all, and trust me, you're not alone. Sometimes the loudest success is the one nobody sees coming. Let's build a community of people who chose freedom over approval. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.